How are you?
Hey, Everett.
Is this that meeting Friday?
Are you gonna sing? Are you gonna sing?
I think Bill could do it.
I won't be there.
So you were just teasing us?
That's
Tempting us
garden.
with your singing ability.
Jesus. Well, my tulips are.
Trying to clear the room.
Bill Rose now, crooner. Get her ready.
I'll give this back.
Great.
Everybody and I used to love No, I sure doesn't. Did you talk to Pat? He said a couple hours he could come.
Yeah, we could maybe other stuff while we're waiting for them or whatever.
Oh, this is gonna be a long one. We're going all the way up to Marshfield Thursday night to
Great.
pick up on a class that we missed.
On Google Maps and it's like, it's simple, but it's gonna take a minute.
Yep. How far back do you have to do, like a month?
Didn't know Dave would populate it with all this.
It's like 2,600. But 600 of them are from one of the hospitals, so that'll always be.
Yeah, that shouldn't be too bad.
Just can't keep. Money's not there.
It's bad. It is bad. Holy moly.
This
So,
one done.
so
Right?
That'll be enough to
Funny
keep
too, is
Luke
it the
busy
greatest?
for a while I do the rest. You're not getting them yet.
ready through.
You're not getting them yet. You said I have enough done to.
You think I won't pay attention? I'm just kidding.
I had a crowd center line going to whatever I
No,
was going
because
to.
then you'll have to wait for me to get the rest of mine done.
Kiwi in Wild
Oh
Rose,
my goodness, I have a headache.
drifting across.
And we didn't even start yet.
I know.
You know, but if I'd have hit those drifts
Only a
hard,
matter of time I'm just.
buried it. I'd have put it right in the ditch. The Stone Ridge owns their own big end loader to clean the
Why is it in here if I hate it?
This is not one.
No. This is. Love my haircut. Yeah. Tiny, tiny. I like it.
This week, Thursday, they leave for Paris.
But I'm gonna miss Max. I mean, hyper little fella, isn't he? Oh, does it? Or maybe my watch is on. Okay,
Nieces,
it's 7 o'clock and we'll call a meeting to order. First, we'll have a silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, sit down. We're gonna do roll call. I was only joking.
If you're not here, you can't pray.
Mrs. Krantz. Here. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Tim.
Here.
Mr. Gasky.
Here.
Mr. Eckstein.
Here.
Mr. Weddy.
Here.
Mrs. Polana.
Here, sort of.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Riddle's excused. Mr. Crawford.
Here.
Mark Kirschner.
Here.
Okay, now we'll have silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have no public comments, so we'll move right on to the approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Motion by Weddy, second by Crawford. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. And now the minutes of the February 19th, 2013 meeting. They were at your desk. Okay, a motion by Bernadette, second by Larry Tim. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We have no old business, and we're going to move right on to new business and presentations. And we have a report and presentation on weigh-in on Winnebago Waterways Project. Terry Puckstead, Zoning Land Conservation Department Director. And I did get a letter in the mail today telling us that, I don't know, there was an article or something, but they're telling us that Winnebago County is not part of the collaborative project funded by the grant. Oh, wait. Let's see. Article weigh-in on Winnebago Waterways, 5th paragraph is stated that Winnebago County is part of collaborative project funded by the grant from the DNR. And I must remind you that Winnebago County is not a participant in the grant application. So I'll give you that.
applied for and received the grant, and they're the ones that are responsible for all the match, so maybe that's what they're talking about too. Winnebago County was not very participatory at the beginning, but they have been sending representatives to the meeting. The idea behind the grant was, obviously the Winnebago pool is very big. There are 5 counties around it, Outagamie, Calumet, Winnebago, and Waushara, because they did the whole pool. So with Poygan and some of the other connecting bodies of water, we are involved in it too. And it always seems to me like it's better to have a place at the table than not show up. So I have been going, and Deb's been involved too. And they received the grant, they had some meetings, they discussed that there's certainly some very big problems that come with such a large body of water, as well as some big advantages. Just the fisheries alone, they estimate to bring in more than $200 million a year for the surrounding communities. So there are advantages, and then there's big problems. I'm sure you've heard about the algae blooms and the weed problems of a few years ago. There's invasive species, there's boating issues. You know, even just managing the fisheries is a pretty big issue to most people. So they've been trying to identify what people think the problems are and how they can be approached with a cooperative effort. Obviously the water and the fish and none of the problems end when you get to the municipal boundary. And should there, you know, they don't want to duplicate efforts between counties and towns and villages and cities. They want to try to come up with some cooperative method of addressing all these issues. So right now they are in the, what I want to call the public outreach stage of the project, and they've hired a consulting firm, that has come up with a website that you can go to with an email address on the back of this page and make comments. They'll have a series of questions over the next several weeks trying to figure out where people think the biggest issues are and what, I mean, people always come up with good ideas for solutions too, so they're going to be looking for those too. And they're going to do some other more traditional surveys and things like that. But that's where the project is right now, is still really on that fact-finding public outreach mission. So I would encourage you all to chime in. You know, we don't play a big part in it again because it's the shore of Huygen that's in Waushara County, and like 90% of it is owned by DNR. So, you know, does it affect us a lot? Probably not. But I know a lot of people that boat on the whole pool. I know people that fish. I'm sure the bars in Tustin would like some support so they can, you know, increase tourism. And that's the idea behind the project, is to get everyone involved and see if there's some cooperative way that they can better manage that whole system. So that's my report, unless you have some questions.
Just want to remind you that it includes the whole Pine River watershed, which goes all the way up to Wild Rose almost.
Well, the watershed is included, but that's not included in this project. It's Huygen, Bunamore, Winneconne, Winnebago, and parts of the Fox and Wolf Rivers that connect those. But they're not looking at the entire watershed. They're looking at where you can probably get most reasonably with a boat. So that's the part that it's focusing on for this particular grant. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. All right, now we are going to have a presentation from the sheriff. One is on Code Red, and the other one is on jail staffing. And I don't know if one wants to go first, or are you doing it together?
Kind of put everything all together.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're passing out some more information, I guess, and while they're doing that, I just like to report you're probably looking at a very tired staff because we've been pretty busy for the last couple of weeks, but there will be a news release coming out probably before noon tomorrow relative to the incident in Mount Morris, which has been keeping us up quite late, many nights, but it is progressing in the right direction as far as we're concerned. Also, if you look at the top sheet on the packet that you just handed out, Human Services and the Sheriff's Department, if you haven't seen the sign that's up in red granite across from Piggly Wiggly, it looks like the top picture there. We made 2 of those signs. The second one, we have mounted, refurbished our Crime Stoppers float that Crime Stoppers had, and put that on one side and put Crime Stoppers on the other. And I'm going to ask the Crime Stoppers board to pay for the materials that it took to do that. So we will be able to put that heroin sign out, move it around in different communities around the county, but also then be able to put the trailer, because it's on a trailer, put it in parades this summer. I know we sent you an awful lot of information, and there's some additional information in your packets that we just handed out on MABUS. There's a 2-page front and back outline on some of the educational opportunities that are out there for the PREA. I wasn't sure if we gave you the Code Red, so we made another copy of that. I think we might have a duplicate on that. And what we did was we put together a PowerPoint that we originally had thought we were going to show to the public safety meeting, and they wanted us to bring it here to the county board. So we're going the PowerPoint is really about jail staffing, but it's more than that. It's about Code Red, and it's about long-range planning, I guess, that for our department. And I guess all we are hoping to do tonight, because there is no jail staffing resolution on the agenda, is to just spark a conversation for you folks so that you can hopefully make some informed decisions and try to keep the money out of it, at least at this point in time. And we thought that it would be best to leave that for another meeting, either next month, or public safety, or whatever you want to do. So anyway, the PowerPoint. It really, we entitled it Future Challenges, and I guess along with challenges go opportunities. And we understand from our office that it's about a revenue and expenses, and we do have an appreciation for the situation that not only you folks are in, but the same situation that town boards are in, village boards, city councils. There's a whole lot of stuff rolling downhill from Washington, D.C. and Madison, and unfortunately, we're kind of the end of the food chain. And really, it's gotten to a point where there's a difference between what we need and what we want, or what we want and what we need. And those are some of the tough decisions that we all have to make on a department level, and that's really what this board is charged with on a county level. And what we try to do at the sheriff's office is plan for the future. And the future for you is not just the sheriff's department, it's human services, it's highways, it's parks, it's the courts, it's the Department of Aging, it's a little bit of everybody. But tonight, obviously, I'm here to talk, or we're here to talk about the county board and the sheriff's office, and somehow working together to, provide service to the constituents that we all represent. And I guess at the end of the day, what we're hoping to do is to reach our goals, your goals, the county's goals successfully. This is not about the board versus the sheriff, or the sheriff versus the board. It's not about the sheriff versus other departments. It's not about what other counties are doing. It really is about us, in this case, our office and the county board, but in reality, it's all the departments within the county working together to fulfill our responsibilities. At the end of the day, I think we need to not forget that we have an obligation, I think, to serve the residents to the best of our ability. And unfortunately, in the economic times that we all are in, probably personally as well as government, there's a lot of tough decisions that have to be made. And I guess the best we can do is to try to make good, informed decisions. So what we really looked at when we sat down to put this together was what is the long-range plan for the sheriff's department? And I will tell you right up front, this is a whole lot about wants and not necessarily about needs. But I think we try to look more into the future than just week to week, month to month, similar to what I'm sure that you folks do on a personal level. So we just sat down and I told my staff, okay, let's just come up with a list. What is it? What is it we want, need, think the future is going to look like? And I have no idea what the number of years could be. I'm sure it's going to be more than 5. I hate to see long-range plans that are more than 10. But at the same time, it's really long-range planning, I think, is not something that's cast in stone because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But I think we need to come up with some idea, and then every once in a while it's going to have to be tweaked. So part of that is Code Red, which we're going to tell you a little bit about Code Red tonight. Part of it is about jail staffing and what we feel the needs are there to meet our obligations. There's been, seems like EMD has been a conversation that's been had off and on for a year or more. Just recently, and I don't have anything hard and fast from the fire services on this, but I understand that at one time, fire services was not going to get involved in MABUS, which is Mutual Aid Box Alarm System. But what I'm hearing now, coming back from people in the fire service in the county, is that maybe they are looking that way. And part of that, to be honest with you, is if they don't do it, maybe the grants, maybe MABUS will be tied to the ability to get grants. And I don't think anybody wants to go out and buy a $500,000 fire truck without some grant dollars. So it's about how MABUS impacts our office. It's about emergency management, and it's about, it's a huge job that Tim does, and maybe at some time it needs to be full-time as emergency management. I've brought this up before. It's difficult, although we are working with Brian and EMS on our equipment that's over in the garage. But at some point in time, and this maybe came up when this board or the board before you was thinking about remodeling that building into office areas, and we would need some space for our 2 buses and our light truck and some of the other equipment we have over there. It's about, we have a lot of equipment invested in squad cars. We have a lot of electronics. There's probably more electronics in our squad cars now than you have in some of your computer systems in businesses. It's just a lot. The cars are very computerized, and the equipment that we're putting in is very computerized, and they're sitting outside in the weather, and we're trying to make them last as long as we can, trying to make the equipment last as long as we can. So, is there a garage, a shed, a lean-to or something to put them in so we can keep them out of the weather? We haven't had any issues with security, but the world is changing, and we might have. Our evidence storage on the space that we share with the Parks Department. Right now, we have about space for 1 vehicle in there, but last year when we had the vehicle traffic crash involving 2 vehicles and a homicide investigation, we had that pretty well plugged. Plus, we keep our other equipment in there. The outside storage is sometimes small. We try to keep that stuff moved out the best we can, but for investigative purposes, sometimes we have to hang on to big pieces of equipment for a long time. It's about other staffing. At some point in time, the way things have been going, are we going to need more investigative staff? I'm here to tell you that the issues with young people in schools aren't getting necessarily any better. We're sparing the rod and spoiling the child more and more every day. So, do we need additional school resource staff? The internet crimes, the drug offenses are on the increase, and quite frankly, in the last 2 weeks when we've been working this homicide, everything else gets shoved aside. And is that really fair, I guess, or it doesn't go away? We've talked often with I don't know if we did an exec committee, but with Deb about, the increase in our technology out there of actually having a computer technician at some time, because that increases every day. And what has happened is my supervisors in our office have had less and less time to supervise staff, and the type of staff that we hire, even though that there's two fine staff members here, staff does need to be supervised, and we need to be able to do that, not necessarily to watch what they're doing, because we don't hire anybody that we don't trust and that, but they need some guidance too, and things are changing for them on the job, and they shouldn't have to. They should be corrected when they need to be corrected, and so we're all on the same page. One of the things that I talked to a gas man about some time ago, and he quite frankly told me that at that time it wasn't economically feasible or prudent to switch from gasoline engines to LP or compressed natural gas. Talked to the same gentleman a couple weeks ago, and he says, you know what, with the price of natural gas and the price of gasoline, it's becoming more economical. And I just see a couple weeks ago that Quick Trip is going to start having a dispenser at their stations, and I'm sure they're doing it to make money, so it must be cost effective for them. So I've mentioned it to Tom Dalkey, because he's another, they do have somehow they use that for diesel engines, and I'm sure that we're probably the biggest gasoline user in the county, and Tom is probably the biggest diesel fuel user. So I think we need to maybe look at that. Is it economically feasible to go in that direction? The building that we're in out on Division Street is 12 or 13 years old. just like your house, my house, every once in a while you need a coat of paint on it or whatever. There's things that need to be done to make sure that that building lasts, for many, many more years, but you can't just let that go. Office furniture replacement. Our outside security cameras need to be upgraded. They're failing on us, and potentially because of PREA, the addition of additional jail security cameras. And then I left a couple of places on there because I'm sure that I missed some that you're going to think of. But again, I think it's prudent for us to be looking at the big picture, and so that's why we did that. Our jail staffing recommendation, I guess, back in 1998 when they opened the facility on Division Street, that was what was recommended that we have for jail staffing. I can tell you that we're under that as we speak, and I think that some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight are adding to our staff's responsibility. And really at the end, in the jail setting, it's really about risk management, and it's my risk as sheriff, my responsibility to take care of those inmates or make sure that nothing bad happens, manage the risk. And the county, I believe, has some part of that also. And we have officers, we have employees that are working every day in there, and it's about making sure that they're protected. We have tried very hard to hire quality staff. I think we've for the most part have succeeded in that. We have one of our corrections officers that maybe has interviewed someplace else, and I told her, I said, I'd really like to give you a bad recommendation because I'd like to keep you, but it's a good move for her, and I certainly can't stand in her way because it would be best for her to move to another area for personal reasons. And so I told her, I said, well, I hope you bomb your interview, but I understand she didn't. But also told her if it doesn't work out, I'd hire you back in a heartbeat. Because we do take the time, we try to take the time to hire good people, do the background checks. We try to provide them with as much training as we possibly can squeeze in, because it makes for a better staff, it makes for a more smoothly run operation, it makes for less risk. We try to manage our risk. And then in your packets that we provided for you before, there was 3 court cases that you can read at your leisure. But the first one is about our duty, my duty to protect the inmates. And I know that sometimes we don't like to think of it that way, but that is our job. And we, regardless of what they might have done or who they might have been, or what their families are that can't enter into it, they need to leave our facility in somewhat the same condition physically that they came in. I need to manage that risk. So we do have a duty to protect. There's another case that talks about staffing levels that are adequate to protect the detainees. Again, that's not a real popular notion, but PREA, which we're going to talk about in a minute, is probably up the ante on that a little bit. And then the last one is a case where it was decided in court that lack of funds was not an excuse to not follow through on your responsibilities. Changes since 1998. The physical, we've added 10 beds to that jail. We did that by eliminating one of the locker rooms that was not being used, and we're currently at 127 beds. We have combined the jail administrator job with the chief deputy position, so he's a two-headed monster, I guess. Our transport volume has gone up, not only with transports that we have to do between facilities, the courthouse and our facility, but also the number of warrants that we're picking up, because people aren't paying their fines, they get picked up, and we have to go and get them, bring them back to court. I don't think it's pretty easy to see, if you're out in the community at all, that medical and mental health issues are a bigger issue out in the community at large. And I'm telling you that we don't get the medically well and the mentally well people aren't the people that we're getting in. Usually they come with some issues. It could be withdrawal, it could be depression, it could be just a whole bunch of things that we have to deal with. And then, just a general decreased respect for authority, whether it's a parent, a police officer, a fireman, or your neighbor who won't keep his barking dog quiet, and it's just a kind of a lack of respect for each other. And we're seeing an increase instances of violent behavior out in the community. Those are the same people that come to our jail with don't care attitudes, I guess, if you will. And then the last thing that is relatively new on the horizon, because the federal government has only been talking about it since 2003, and that's PREA. So next slide. What that is 2003 is when they started talking about it. August of 2013 is when it's supposed to be instituted by all correctional facilities across the nation, and it's Prison Rape Elimination Act. It's something that we do on an everyday basis with our inmates. It's just we do it kind of more informally, as George said, and it comes with some really juvenile behaviors, but PREA is going to force us to do a better job at documenting, investigating, and following through and reporting and being able to pass an audit. And again, I believe that this is probably going to come at the expense of the federal government is going to say, well, if you don't do it, that's fine, but those grants, those funds, payments, whatever, you're just not going to get them, number one. And number two, if inmates travel from institution to institution, they will be well versed in PREA, and they will know which buttons to push to get what they want, if you will, if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And again, it's about risk management. And one of the things is that the sheriff shall appoint an upper level manager to take care of this PREA program. Well, my upper level manager in the jail is currently also the chief deputy. And I might have a mutiny on my hand after a while if we keep, giving him more jobs. But that's one of the requirements. And that's why we will be coming back to you with a staffing plan at some time in the future. What we have to do is we have to make sure that there's prevention and education is being done to a point where we have to tell every inmate upon their arrival, we have to explain the PREA to them. We have to explain to them what their rights is and how it works. Okay? I didn't make the law, okay? And then, if you happen to get sentenced for a year, you will get 11 more times, because every month we need to review that with you. Okay? Again, I'm thinking that whoever wrote that probably did not run a small county jail and have to do all that. But it sounded like a good idea, whatever. And truly, we need to protect. I mean, we have a duty to protect our inmates from sexual assault. We have a duty to protect the inmates from being sexually assaulted by our staff. And we do that. We just don't have a nice, formal, tidy documentation of it. The investigators of this have to be specially trained. It must be prompt, thorough, and objective. And, we get anonymous and third-party complaints every day at the sheriff's office. And if it's anonymous and third-party, and, a lot of those go like, unless you're going to come forward, we got other work we can do. We're required to investigate anonymous and third-party complaints with the Prison Rape Elimination Act. So, if mother, little Johnny, who's in jail, says something to mother on the telephone or writes her a letter, and she gets all on glued about what's happening to poor little Johnny because he got depantsed in the cell block, something that might have happened in a Fayette locker room in 8th grade. We have to investigate that. It doesn't make any difference whether it's anonymous or it's third party. And of course, there's always the pleasant evidence collection, and then of course you have to preserve the evidence. And I didn't take this next slide out. Yeah. But this is what you're going to see when we do come back with a proposed staffing resolution, which DOC requires that there's a staffing resolution between the sheriff and the county board for each jail facility, so we have to have one. We're going to be asking more than likely, and I guess we will try to keep an open mind, but this is what we came up with, and hopefully somebody else will have a better, less expensive idea, but we believe that we need to increase our minimum staff from 3 to 4 per shift, and that because of the fact that my upper level manager is already serving 2 roles, and now I got to have somebody in upper level management serving as my PREA manager, we're looking for potentially a corrections supervisor. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tim, who's going to give you a little bit about Code Red, which is another one of our long-range planning laws.
I think each one of you have a copy of the Code Red brochure that was provided to me by the Emergency Communications Network, who supplies the Code Red service. Code Red is a mass notification system, and it is utilized, as you can see here, by the city of Onalaska, as well as the counties of Green Lake, Marquette, and Portage County. And I think if you were to ask Sheriff Podol or Sheriff Gaffney, they would tell you that they are pleased with the product and with the service that they receive from Emergency Communications Network in both setting up and in using the system. Code Red is basically, it's a mass notification system. You can go ahead. It's used by thousands of communities nationwide. It's geographically based community notifications. It's very reliable voice, text, and email alerts. It's high-speed staff notification. We're able to set up our own notification calling tree for the Sheriff's Department or for EMS or for the fire departments, for public health, whoever, and get that information out to the people that need the information quickly. It's a very rapid, simple deployment. We will prepare a number of, for lack of a better term, canned announcements as far as weather alerts and so on that will be disseminated upon activation of the system. It's immediately implemented, and we are also provided with real-time call statistics. One of the very nice things about Code Red is that we can geomap a specific area and send notifications out just to that area. People with cell phones, their emails, texts, so on, landlines, those areas will be the only areas that would receive the message. This is more than just for weather emergencies. We're talking about being able to use it at the Sheriff's Department, such as the way Winnebago County used their system back during Christmas last year when they had a shooting in their county, and they were able to notify that immediate neighborhood that they needed to stay in their homes, lock their doors, and report any suspicious activity to their department. So we're looking at it more not just as a weather notification system, but as a all hazards notification system for the county. So how does Code Red work? It's internet based. We use social media. There is a Code Red mobile alert app. It comes to your landline, email, text messages, and cell phones. One of the nice things about Code Red is ECN has developed a valid data program. It validates the database to make sure that all the telephone numbers that are in the system are valid numbers, and that the system isn't continually calling a non-existent telephone number or sending out a non-existent text or email. So that helps out quite a bit. So how do we use it? Emergency management, we would use it for chemical spills, snow emergency, gas leaks, severe weather alerts. Law enforcement, we can use it in the, for missing children, at-risk adults, wanted criminal alerts, sexual predator notifications, public health notifications as far as drinking water contamination, flu pandemics, the need for certain types of vaccinations and so on, reminders, etc. Fire department, we can, or for fire departments, we can publish evacuation notices, and we can also, under the emergency management function, we can publish evacuation routes when it pertains to spills of hazardous materials, gas leaks. If we had a large fire, areas to avoid. Public works, when there are planned outages, snow plowings. If we declare a snow emergency, or if one of the communities declares a snow emergency, we can send that information out. And a lot of times, we will be notified at the Sheriff's Department the morning of a road closure if the Highway Department is doing work on a specific project. And we can send that information out also to alert the public that they need to avoid certain areas. And for internal use, for first responder notifications, official comment, direction, and critical incident call out. We're able to notify our staff and get people in fairly quickly once we have everything loaded into the system. The system is supplied initially by information provided by ECN through the caller databases that we currently have in the public. We then supply data into the system, which would include our 911 data, but then the most accurate part of the Code Red system is the consumer notification information, the information that people go online and enter into the system themselves. ECN will set up a website. That website will be accessible. People will be able to go on, enter their information in, how they want to be notified, and they'll be entered into the system. And that way, when we have people coming up, let's say to the campgrounds and so on, they'll be able to subscribe to this service at no cost and be notified of severe weather in areas that may be without any type of notification system. I was tasked with this project pretty much shortly after I took over this position. I think we're all aware that there are better, more economical routes of notifying the public of emergencies than the way we are currently doing it with sirens. Sirens are, as the Public Safety Committee has heard me say probably 100 times, are old. They're antiquated. It's old technology. They've been around since the 50s. I mean, they were designed as air raid warnings in case of a nuclear attack from the Russians. And they've slowly evolved into being used now as all-weather warning systems. They're expensive to maintain. The communities are, I think some of the communities that have multiple sirens are finding that the cost is becoming a burden. The town of Dakota found that their siren was too big of a burden. They have abandoned that siren. It is no longer working. and they have no plans of repairing it or putting it up back into use. I talked for a good period of time with the rep, not just from Code Red, but from a number of other suppliers, and found that Code Red was probably hands down the best product. And from the feedback that I received from Sheriff Padol and from Sheriff Gaffney in regards to the product, I was pleased with the information that they provided and felt that this would be the best way for Waushara County to go. I've talked with Code Red for about a year now, and we originally started out with this service based on the number of residents that we have at a base rate of $12,500. We were able to get them down just recently now to $9,500 for the yearly service for a 5-year contract with a non-appropriations opt-out at any time. So if we would lose appropriations for funding at budget time, we could opt out of the program and no penalty to the county. So basically, that's Code Red kind of in a real quick nutshell. And I was hoping that the rep could be here tonight, but unfortunately his wife is expecting, and he lives in Florida, so it would have been a hard trip for him to make had she called and said she was in labor. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Tim, how does this replace your first responder notification now?
This would be our first responder notification. Our
Okay.
first responder notification now is just our dispatchers trying to call everybody.
Okay.
So we would be able to, this would be just one, boom, it's, they send out the message. It's sent out to all to everybody's cell phones. Everybody's on the same page, or whether it's an email alert, whatever, however they get it, everybody's gonna get it at the same time. They're gonna know what it is that the department is expecting of them.
Do you have any other questions for Tim?
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
And the other thing I think is that, I'm not a social media fan myself, and I'm not on Facebook and all that, but that's not what the generation that's come up behind us is all about. For instance, we do have a fan page that we put information on, a fan page for the sheriff's office, and we typically will get 1,300 hits that people look at that, and it's kind of a hit and miss thing. We put some on, try to put some on once a week so people look at it, but we get a lot of hits, and I don't know when I get that number if that includes the number of people that they forward it to. I don't know how to figure that out, but I was just amazed at the number of hits on our fan page for the sheriff's office. The other thing then that we've been talking about for a long time is EMD. There's some requirements that we're going to have to do if we're going to go that direction. It has to do with training. There's 40 hours of training that's required. The 24 hours, I'm not sure of the number of hours for the recertification, and I don't know if that's annual or semi-annual. I was very encouraged to see Brown County is having the same difficulty we're having, which I'm thinking other counties are having, and that is finding good qualified people to be dispatchers. And Brown County is working with Northeast Technical College to come up with a training program for people who might want to get into that field, which hopefully would weed out some of the people that either can't do it, don't know what they're getting into ahead of time, and so it doesn't pan out for them. I don't think at this point it'll be an associate's degree, but they are working in that direction. Also, the state of Wisconsin in their 911 legislation and the committee that they have, they're talking about making some requirements for minimum training for dispatchers, similar to what we currently have for corrections officers. And I really think that that's the way it's moving. That's the way it went from when I was hired as a sworn officer and the county sent me to school to now we don't hire anybody unless they've got a 2 years associate's degree and 60 college credits. Corrections is kind of moving in that same direction that sworn officers were. but we're still sending them to the 4 weeks. 4 weeks of training to become certified. So I think you're going to see dispatchers kind of going to go along in the future is going to go along in that direction. It's a good thing because we'll get better people, but it's on the flip side of it is it's going to require that we spend more money in training to keep them certified. Over and above that, if we're going to do EMD, all of our dispatchers would have to have 32 hours of initial training and then either 8 or 16 hours of recertification. I don't know if that's annual or semi-annual, but it's not as simple as just saying we're going to do it. Next slide. EMD, part of EMD is we have to have some sort of supervision over the program. My understanding is that we have to have a hospital doctor advisor. We have to do call reviews. I have to have somebody in our office that can review the calls on a regular basis to make sure that we're doing it right, make sure our dispatchers are doing it right. Again, it's about risk management, and we have to document that. Implementation, if we were to implement this, none of the other responsibilities that we currently have our dispatchers doing is going to go away. It's going to mean that the dispatcher is going to have to be dedicated to that call until medical gets on scene, and I believe that there probably would be some degree of increased liability. Next slide. EMD, dispatch improvements. Actually, the room that our dispatch center is in right now is cramped, it's crowded, it's too small. One of the things that we're lacking in that room is an area for a supervisor to be close by that can monitor what's going on in there better. And there is no break area in there for them to heat up a bowl of soup or whatever. They have to go down to the break room. And the furniture needs to be updated to current industry standards. Staffing, again, we believe that we'd like to look at another dispatch corporal position to increase the supervision and or an additional dispatcher or corrections/dispatcher, because we have 4 of our staff members that are cross-trained in both corrections and dispatch. So that's a little bit about EMD. And then the final thing that I really don't know a whole lot about, because this was something that we talked, or the fire services talked about, and then it kind of went away. They didn't seem to be interested in it, so I didn't really follow it. What I provided in your packets was every quarter they came out with a MABUS newsletter, and because we weren't doing it, I didn't bother reading it. I didn't bother saving it. Well, they came out with one last week, and so I saved it, and I read it, and I included it in the packet. It is a well-organized group, I think, in the state of Wisconsin that has many people on board. I think it is something that is picking up steam. The snowball is getting bigger, and it's going downhill. And again, I think part of that might be because future grants might be tied to the fact that departments are going to be MABUS compliant or not. I believe, again, I haven't heard from the fire service, but I think that there will be, potentially could be a request forthcoming from them that we join in that with them. The information I have so far, and they talked about that in that quarterly newsletter about communications with dispatch and the service provider on the scene, is a key part of it. It's going to require some additional training for our dispatchers, and again, they're talking about a dispatcher dedicated to a major fire event, start to finish. And now we're not talking just 7 minutes to get the ambulance or rescue on the scene. We're talking about a day or more, and they expect that one of the requirements of that potentially could be to have a dispatcher dedicated to that call, start to finish, which causes me some staffing issues, I guess. And then there's just a whole lot of unanswered questions about MABUS yet, but it is something that I think that we need to be looking at, and I probably need to be following it a little bit closer. one of the disheartening things about it is that the county got a grant to purchase some equipment that was needed, some radio equipment that was needed to institute this. And then because the fire services decided they weren't going to do it, we had to pay the money back that we got on the grant. So we have some of the equipment, and we ended up having to pay the money back because we didn't have, I think it was 3 fire services we needed. 4 fire services needed to sign on to it, and at that time I think there was only 1 that was interested. And so it was to the tune of about $18,000, that little over $18,000 that we bought equipment, thought we were going to get the grant money, or had the grant money, but because it didn't go Mavis, we had to reimburse the grant money back. So I think that is potentially something that we need to look at least for long-range planning at the county level. And the last slide, just as we went through and we kind of ranked our priorities within our office, and number 1 was PREA, because it's another one of those mandates. There's going to be, we know that there's going to be some funding tied to that. I talked to Ruth about this today, and I think that, I don't think that on August 1st we have to be ready, because there's no way in this earth that we're be ready by August 1st. But I think we're making, we need to make steps in that direction, if you will. One of the steps, probably the very first step is the Lexipol policy. We've gotten the Lexipol policy that WCA has paid for. We have that done for our sworn officers. This month or early next month, the in-custody policy from that WCA again is paying for is coming out for in-custody policy. So that there's a portion of PREA that's in there. We already know that because there's a portion of PREA that's in our other policy because of the 2 holding cells down we have down here at the courthouse. Doesn't make any difference what size it is. We have to do it for our 2 holding cells. That and the risk involved with housing inmates and preventing bad things from happening while they're in our custody is a huge risk. So we rank that as number 1. We rank Code Red as number 2 because we see it as a service that would be benefit everybody in the county. We rank EMD as number 3, and we rank Mavis number 4, and all the other things on our wish list we ranked as all others as last. I guess all we're hoping to accomplish here tonight is to spark some conversation amongst you folks, because we live this every day, and it's easy for us to get our heads wrapped around, or easier, I guess, because I'm struggling with this PREA thing, but it's easier for us to get our heads wrapped around it than it is for you, because you don't deal with it every day. But at the end of the day, it's about a partnership between the sheriff's office, this county board. It's a partnership about every other department in the county, this county board, and we understand there's some tough decisions to be made. So, George, you were going to interrupt me when you had some good things to say, so you can just field all the questions.
No, and just real quick, just to add to the, well, one, just to show everyone I one guy. But, yeah, I'm up here because you're on camera somewhere. No, but in regards to the PREA, and I'm well versed in PREA now over the last handful of years and all the training. Just to give everyone an idea, it stands for Prison Rape Elimination Act, but doesn't, just solely look at sexual assaults, but sexual harassment, lewd behavior, anything of a sexual nature is what this covers. And the trouble it's going to cause small jails, like Waushara, Adams, Marquette, and any other small jail you can name, is sort of troubling to the group of us. But I talked with the jail inspector and I said, we're going to give a presentation on PREA to the county board, and what would be a good historical similarity, to sort of throw at them to make them understand, where PREA was, how it's evolved and where it's going to be. And in talking, we were discussing the seatbelt law, where it starts out as sort of, federal mandates and legislation and standards. They throw it out to the states, they give the states the options, but they also tie funding into it. So do it or don't do it, but this is what'll happen. And that's where we're at. PREA is a standard. They're still giving you an option, but they're tying funding into that option. So they're saying, here's your options, but this is the consequences. And for my staff and myself, we just had an incident not too long ago. We house mostly males, mostly 18 to 24-year-olds is generally the dynamic. And as you can imagine, it's a young male group housed together. Anyone that probably has more than one son in the house, anyone that's been in a locker room, anyone that's been in a male-dominated area understands the behavior of youthful males. We just had an incident, two guys were just horsing around. Neither one of them really, were angry at each other. As part of this horsing around, one guy comes up behind another guy, yanks down his jail trousers. He's standing there in his boxers in the middle of the day room. All's funny. One of my officer staff sees it, opens the door, says, "What's going on?" "It's okay, we're just horsing around. There's no problems here." "Okay, quit your horsing around." And we went on about our business. With PREA, those days are over. We'll have to look into this. We'll have to separate the inmates. We'll have to investigate. We'll have to check for possible crimes that were committed. We'll have to do the reporting on this and the follow through, and then the assumed mandated state and federal reporting, to document this, to say we've had this PREA incident, and this is the nuts and bolts of it. So that's where we're heading, and it's coming soon. And like Sheriff Peterson said, mid-August is the deadline when they want compliance to start. But if we can show that we're moving towards compliance, we're taking strides towards compliance with the new policies that we're going to be initiating, with the looking at staffing measures, cameras, things like that in the jail, and showing them that this is what we're looking at for 2014, and this is what we're looking at for mid-2014, and this is where we're going to end up, or where we want to be, is probably going to be key in us getting past audits that the federal government are going to impose on all the jails. So,
George, what funding is in jeopardy? From what sources?
Right now, with PREA, if you're not PREA compliant, you lose any federal grant funding. And right now, the main one for us is SCAP, which is the State Criminal Alien Assistance Program. I guess each year it's all determined on how many you house. You submit a report, they do a report, they get it back to you. But the bigger one is housing for other agencies like DOC. So right now we get funding from DOC if we hold felony probation holds without any new charges. So basically someone's put on a probation hold, they were charged with felony, they're on probation or parole, they're put on a probation hold with no additional charges, and they come into our facility. We get money back for housing them. Also, there's something that's called an extended sanctions that probationers and parolees can be put on, that instead of being revoked and sent back to prison, or being revoked and taken off probation and given an extended amount of jail time, they give them a moderate amount of jail time, 30, 60, 90 days, and they house them in our facility, and they pay us for those. Now what happens is that if we're not PREA compliant, anyone who houses with us as an arm of that become non-PREA compliant. So if DOC were to house with us with those ES sanctions, and possibly their probation hold, I don't know how that's going to work really, but I know the ES sanctions would be in real jeopardy. They couldn't put them in our facility. They'd have to find another facility to put them in, because then DOC becomes non-PREA compliant because they're housing them with us.
So just ballpark, how much money are you talking about? How much revenue would we potentially lose?
We figured at the Sheriff's Department that we stand, if we're not PREA compliant, we're deemed not PREA compliant, kaputs, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably $175,000 to $200,000 annually.
I think the bigger issue for me, or another issue for me, is the fact that those inmates that are housed in places that check in, and every month they're gonna get it, and they come to our place, and they say, oh, we didn't get it, are we gonna be the weak chicken that somebody's gonna pick on with a lawsuit or a frivolous complaint, or, you know, that kind of legal issues?
And future grants are another thing to keep in mind. We don't know what, you know, what that may develop in the future. Federal government, state government puts out the grants, but non-FRIA compliant facilities would not be eligible for the funding, you know, things like that.
With jail assessment?
I don't know what jail assessment.
I guess from my standpoint, again, take the money out of it, from a risk management standpoint, it's just good sense, because it doesn't take much of a lawsuit to eat up the time. So I know that we've, you know, put a lot on your plate. Again, we don't expect any, you know, anything other than for you to mull it over, and I know you can't call each other and email each other and get involved with open meetings violations, but, you know, certainly at any other committee where it's appropriate that you talk about it, executive, public safety, wherever, I guess, at the end of the day, buck stops at your desk. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of bucks stopping at your desk right now. So, thank you.
All right, we have no other questions. Let's move on to discussion and possible action items. Department of Transportation request to convey highway right-of-way title. Motion to approve by
I will second the motion.
Eckstein, second by Weddy. Is there any question or discussion on this?
How did this come into being?
What happened is, way back, a gazillion years ago, the state was not allowed to own its own property, and so they used to buy right away and put it in the county's names, and then they changed the law, the state can own their own right away, and every now and then they find a parcel that's still in the county's name. So when they redid, the work on 73, and they were doing all their surveying work, they found a piece of right away that was still in West Sheriff County. But it's actually state right away on State Highway 73, and so they're just ordering us to give them back their property.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we will go on to delegating citizen participation plan hearing to executive committee. Deb, I think will explain.
Okay, thank you. About 3 years ago, the county was involved with an application that went to Stone Ridge through the CDBG fund, and at that point in time, we had an initial public hearing, and now it's getting time for the closing public hearing. You have to have one when you start it, and you have to have one when you close it. And Bill Wheeler was notified, I think it was March 7th, that we had to do that. And because of the way the Argus is our official newspaper, and you have to have a notice 2 weeks in the Argus, so there was no way to have it incorporated into this county board meeting. So initially, Bill was told he had until March of 2014, and then he found out that we had to have it this year before the end of March. And so I talked a little bit with Donna, and we were wondering if it would be all right, if it's acceptable to you, because in our citizen participation plan, we have the ability for the county board to delegate that public hearing to another committee. And so we were hoping that you would delegate that authority to the executive committee, and we could have that meeting next Tuesday. We did publish it as for next Tuesday, the 26th, so if the county board decides that it's got to be a county board meeting, we will have to agenda that as a county board meeting. Otherwise, we'll have it as an executive meeting. So that is what we're asking, is that the county board would delegate the authority to have that public hearing at the executive committee meeting. And then also on your desk was the agenda for next Tuesday. The Public Health Department has gotten a change grant, And they also are asking some county board members to come to that meeting so they can interview them for that grant. Maybe Everett could fill you in a little bit more about the details of that, as I think he's been involved with that. But you would also be invited to participate in that part of the meeting also. So,
Well, most of you, I called most of you about that to see what would work and what wouldn't for you as far as time, and that seemed to work. It shouldn't be a long meeting. What it amounts to is we represent the entire county, and we really need your input on that. That's it.
So our motion will be just for the revision, or giving the executive committee.
I'll
Okay.
second the motion.
We have a motion by Eckstein, second by Weddy. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Okay, now we have revisions to Sherrick County Board of Supervisors rules and bylaws, and
Well, every year or so, we look at the bylaws and see if there's anything that needs to be changed, simply to update the way we're doing things, to make them more consistent. So if you start on page 4, the changes there are to more clearly define how we do some of our voting at the reorganizational meeting at the top of the page, and at the bottom of the page. We had previously, in a last revision, taken out or had put in that if the chair and the vice chair and the second vice chair were absent because of the number of people on the county board, we would just cancel the meeting. So this sentence needed to be taken out now to make that consistent with the change we had made before. Page 5 again deals with how we vote at the annual meeting. It's not changing it, it's just making it clear so that next time we have an annual or a reorganization meeting, we don't all go, are these the ones that are secret? Are these the ones that we initial? Because I don't always remember either. On page 13, this was to make a change regarding the duties of the county board in participating in hiring interviews. You had previously said that that should only be for department heads or appointed positions, and unless the department head asked you to participate in hiring. So that was to make that change consistent with changes earlier. On page 15, we had an issue this year earlier, or maybe it was last fall, I don't remember, where one of the committees, being of 3 people, had an issue where one person had a conflict and another person had was a conflict of interest, another person had a scheduling conflict. They weren't going to be able to handle the matter, and the committee needed that issue to go someplace before it could go to county board. And so there had been a talk about if there was a conflict due to the topic, that what should we do with it? That time it went to the executive committee, but the executive committee talked about it and thought that maybe if a committee could not handle something, again, due to your small size, that those issues should be referred directly to the county board instead of to another committee. So that was that change, to give that authority to committees so they knew what to do with those issues. On page 20, there was a change in the Central Wisconsin Winship Partnership. That this came from Land Conservation, just to clarify how things are actually being held. On page 21, the part that is highlighted deals with the Economic Development Corporation. And this is something that I wanted the executive committee to think about, and then for the county board to think about, not necessarily to take place right now, but perhaps at the next reorganization meeting, how you want the Economic Development Corporation to continue, how you want them to function, if it's even necessary for us to have them anymore. When we originally set up the Economic Development Corporation, it was to fund our revolving loan through, and that committee would go out and they would meet with businesses and they would take applications and decide who was a good risk and who wasn't a good risk. They would approve the loans. We would do the loan closing documents. We would set up the collection system. They would pay back the county directly And none of that is happening anymore. Basically, all of that has been given to the Tri-County Economic Development Corporation. The Economic Development Corporation, the money that they get from the county board at budget time basically gets passed through to the Tri-County to do the economic development. So is this still needed? Is it something that is being done by Tri-County and we're just having it happen here too, and it's really duplicative? Is there something that they should be doing that they're not doing? If we do need to have one, how often do they need to meet? I think they were meeting every other month now. The executive committee thought maybe they could meet quarterly. Just as you're thinking about reorganization and as you're thinking during budget time about how you're going to handle some of your funds, this was one committee that we weren't sure if we needed to continue, at least not in the function capacity that it was right now. So that was something for you just to think about. And then also on that page, under the lake management districts, this was also a recommendation from Zoning and Land Conservation, as the Watershed Lakes Council really isn't part of the county or under the county board, that maybe that did not need to be in your bylaws. So those were the changes that we had come up with. I don't know if anybody has any other suggestions that they wanted for changes. This is nothing that needs to be approved tonight. We can certainly approve it at a later date if you have anything else that you would like to see changed or added.
Would you like us to put it on the agenda for next month? Give you a month to
I
think
move
about
we
it?
table it until next month.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
A second by Bob Jones. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we'll go to annual reports prepared by departments.
Thank you. For probably the last 20 years, we've had departments prepare a written document that is an annual report. And I guess I just wanted to revisit that to see if that is something that you want to continue, if we want to do it in a different format. We've been trying to encourage department heads to come to the county board and give short presentations. Is that more beneficial than all the written reports? If you decide that you still want the written report, can we do them in a different format? Can you retrieve them from the website? That's where they're posted. Can you be given electronic versions of them instead of everybody printing out so much paper? So I guess I just want to have a conversation about the value of those reports and if it's time to do it in a different fashion. So any thoughts about that?
I think I would like to see the department heads up here before the board and give a short report. I don't think we need them all at one time. I'd like to see probably that spread out, obviously, over, I guess it would not be called an annual report then,
Okay,
but I guess it could be called an annual report from point to point.
sure. Okay, so just a verbal one?
Yes.
Okay,
I agree. I would like to have the ability to interact with department heads and ask questions, and I can't do that with a printed form.
okay.
Just say, why do you need 37 tons of salt? You know,
Okay.
for every road in the county except
Okay.
mine.
Okay.
Do you think it would be, the reports would still be online, right?
Well, I guess
So-
that's what I'm asking you. Do you want, do they have to even be a written, or do you just want a highlights in writing and then a verbal? You know, I mean, we could do it different ways.
I don't want to wait 3 months to hear a report from each committee. I really like to see the monthly thing, at least so I can get it online if I.
So you want something every month from every department? That's what you're thinking? Yeah. Okay. In a written form? Okay. I guess I didn't want to make this more burdensome to our department heads. I was hoping, you know, can we find a happy medium in there, and that they don't have to do it every month, but maybe quarterly they have to pick something to present to you? I don't want to make it more burdensome.
What kind of a report were you looking for, Everett? I mean,
Well, the committees that I'm not on, I'm still interested in. And so it's nice to know what's happening and what's going on. Maybe some months there isn't that much that's that exciting, but it's still informative. I'm still learning, what's happening. Maybe it's only me, so that's just.
Want it, like, the one we saw tonight from Human Services, is that the format you'd like it in?
I like it that
Or-
way,
Okay.
but that's just me. So whatever anybody else wants. This
Okay, so in lieu of an annual report, you would just like a recap of any high points?
That's fine.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be
Okay.
that detailed.
Okay, but you would like, the board as a whole would like each department at least one time per year come before the county board and give a presentation that is general in nature about, an overview of their.
I think they should anyway, because it justifies their existence, if nothing else.
Okay,
No, and I'm being
Okay.
facetious.
I know.
But no, it just,
okay,
because there are things that are interesting, well, they're always interesting. But no, sometimes there are things where they want to, toot their own horn and say, hey, this is what we've done. This is where we've gone. This is, and they can pick and choose and
Human Services has been doing that every month
right,
Yes, they do.
yeah,
by putting a short report on what happened at the,
okay.
that's what you'd like to see continued, and from all departments?
Yeah, that's more of a committee report. I guess,
Report?
do you mind if any department heads want to weigh in on this as far as what they would think is doable?
I'm kind of torn.
Okay,
I would think that my conduit for information going to the county board would be through the committee. And we do prepare minutes of those meetings, which are posted. I could definitely see, hey, here's a highlight of what our department did throughout the year. Definitely, and always willing to come up and talk about highlights of what's happening. I'm a two-person department, and if I'm putting together a monthly report, I'm not doing my job, which is interacting with the veterans and making sure that they are taken care of. So it's, yeah, I'd love to toot my own horn, because I think we do a lot of good stuff in there. But I think my route to keeping you informed is through my committee.
So what you're saying is, you don't want to do a monthly report, but you also don't want to do a yearly report like we've been doing.
I'm very adaptable to whatever the board says they want. Annual reports are great, I do them anyway, I have to provide an annual report to get the state rank. Well, just, I get the, what you call it, what's the thing you put out every month? The Vet Advantage. The Vet Advantage, he puts out that newsletter. EMS is putting out something else, started putting out something. And we all have minutes for our meetings. I guess it wouldn't be difficult, I don't think, for us, them, to come up with some sort of stats. I mean, that is something we could pick out of our record management system if you want. I don't know what you're into. You want to know how many males and females were in jail? You want to know how many homicides, break-ins, thefts, car crashes we had during the month? You know what I mean? Is that?
Just something to keep us up on what's shaking in the,
Those sort of statistics would be pretty easy to come by pretty quickly. And then my other question was, regardless of what you ask us to do, is there any legal ramifications with the records-wise if we as departments send them as board people this electronically? They're not part of the board, so are we violating anything if we send it to them as long as?
It's informational purposes only. There's not a meeting as long as there's no interaction back and forth between multiple members of the board.
The only problem would be if they got together.
Right.
Okay. So I mean, and I don't know if all of you have email, but
does everyone have email? I know Bob Wadle doesn't, but does everyone else, you, Larry, you don't have it? Okay. Okay, so basically we could print 2 copies and then do the rest by email, if that's the route we decided to go.
But we could also go back to committee chairs, give the reports every month. They should know what's happening in their departments. I mean, you guys, you used to give a report
Yeah, you
every
guys
month
used
about
to.
what happened at your committee meetings in the last month, so that everybody else knew what was going on.
Extension sends copies with every county
Right.
board. That, to me, is the way to do it. If you want to read it, you read it. If you don't, you don't. We used to sit here at county board and go through a half hour of people reading a report that didn't mean anything to most everybody. I think if you got something like we do with extension, I think that works good.
Sheriff's got another question.
And I would agree with Joel, because I sat in some of those county board meetings when the committee chair read the minutes. And, you know, I thought that was, you know, maybe a waste of time, nobody was listening, you know, all that, probably got his minutes, but if the committee chair could summarize what went on, I mean, we try to, in our committee, we try to, you know, keep going to the committees and what's been happening in the last month, and it's not something we're voting on, it's just this is what's happening. So rather, to read the minutes, I think that's probably why they did away with it, because it was reading the minutes. But if it was the committee chair would summarize the highlights.
It's the highlights.
I don't want anything that's gonna cause anybody more work. It's just, I'm interested in some of these other committees as far as what's going on.
Well, as committee chairs, do you feel like you could hit the highlights and, you know, for your committees that you're on?
I think we're going away from what the original discussion was here. It's for the annual
I
report
know.
is what we're looking
Uh-huh.
at. That's what I was looking at, an annual report type thing, rather than kill all the trees on David's farm, preparing these annual reports, you know. That's where I would look at the verbal report, and also if it also could be put online as well. But I don't think we're looking at a monthly thing. That's not what the discussion was supposedly about.
It is, but the monthly report came up
Yeah, right.
through discussion,
Uh-huh.
so that's why we're talking about
Yeah,
that.
I understand that.
Yes, Joe?
I know there's a couple of committees that I have interest in, and I have their people, their secretaries, whoever, they send me a copy of their agendas and minutes by email. So if I wanted that, or if you wanted something ever, I'm sure they'd all send you copies of that. You can keep up pretty much what goes on between agendas and minutes. If you got a question, you can call somebody and ask them. You know, that's all electronics, you don't have to worry about paper.
I could do that rather than asking every committee to send it out to every county
Like
board
you know,
supervisor.
I get 3 or 4 of the different minutes sent to me, email.
So now we'll go back to the annual report.
And you
So-
heard my request, my
Okay.
idea.
So basically, if I can rephrase what you're saying, that the departments would, on a annual
Staggered
basis,
Yes,
would come before the county board and give a recap of their department.
that's correct.
At least once a year, you would want to see them.
Once a year is enough.
At least once a year, okay.
And
All
some departments have to do that. I know that
Most
you
of them
do, and Extension has to do that for the state. I think there's a lot of them that do have the annual report. And
Well,
they
you
can
see,
still do it.
there's a wide variety of the written, I mean, you see some that are very fancy, you see some that are very basic, some that are just statistics, so, you know, you're getting a wide variety now. So, okay, so that's what we'll, I guess if that's your motion, or?
That's my
Yeah,
motion.
okay, all right. Does anybody out there object to that as far as department heads go? Are you all comfortable coming here once a year and tooting your horn? Bill's coming twice, he said. He's already signing up with Melanie. So, good, okay, all right.
Okay, so we have a motion by Dennis. Well, I have a second back there by Pat, but thank you very much. Okay, we have a motion, a second. Is there any other discussion, any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
You'll start seeing
one-
2012
Yeah,
reports.
One comment I should have made when you asked for discussion, didn't get a chance to say it. possibly this is something that the department heads during their department head meeting could set up their own schedule.
Okay. Okay. Okay, now we have consideration and possible action on the following resolutions and ordinances.
Resolution number 9-3-13, resolution authorizing application for TRM grant.
Okay.
Motion to approve the resolution?
Motion by Dennis. By Bernadette. Okay, do we have any discussion or questions concerning this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Resolution number 10-3-13, resolution authorizing cancellation of outstanding checks and escrow accounts, Register of Deeds.
And that was in our packet that we received. Motion by Bernadette. Second by Everett. Any discussion, question? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution number 11-3-13, resolution requesting restoration of base level funding to county land conservation program.
Motion by Joe, second by Larry. Any questions? Comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution number 12-3-13, authorizing the purchase of Code Red emergency notification system.
Make a motion.
Motion by Bob Jones. Second by Mark Kirschner. Do you have any questions?
I do. Where is it in the budget? Or is it going to be on the 2014 budget? I see it now.
So it would come out of surplus for this year.
And it would take effect when?
Out there?
As soon as we have signed contract, we would implement the program, set the training up, and hopefully we'll have it up within 60 days.
How much training is involved in that?
And one other question, during your talk, you mentioned the fact that it would be available to people coming into the campgrounds, et cetera, that are not permanent residents here, probably through their cell phones, which most have.
If they register.
Yeah, well, how are you going to notify these people about the program?
We'll get flyers out to all the campground. I'll be taking care of that.
Would those notifications be included like in the, well, what I'm saying is a lot of the people, or some of the people that are here only part-time, they're part-time residents, whatever. Would something like that be included in their tax notification or something like that so that they would know?
If we can do that, if we're allowed to put information like that in with a billing, I would be more than willing to do that.
I would think that they put in information now about getting dog tags and so on. I don't know that there'd be a
The
problem.
towns would have to agree to that. The municipalities would have to agree to that.
Okay. Because I'd hate to see some people not be able to be notified because they didn't know.
Yeah, the municipalities put out the tax bills, so they would have to stuff
Yeah.
them.
This isn't gonna go the way of EMD in that we approve it, we buy it, and then it sits there.
This will be, once the system is purchased, once the contract is signed, the ECN will begin the website development, begin the database download, and we'll set up the training, because it's all web training, and we'll go from there.
And we have enough dispatchers to handle this program?
I feel
Yes,
strong.
Dennis.
Already doing something that they're already doing, but instead of making multiple calls, they would make one call.
Right.
They would program one
really strongly am in favor of seeing us try to somehow get this EMD in here. However, I can see that this being an advantage to every single resident of the county, where, right now,
Yeah.
so.
Well, and especially
of it.
since some of the sirens aren't working properly and,
Some townships don't have sirens either.
right. Okay,
All right, tonight we'll start with Mr. Crawford.
Yes.
Mark Kirschner.
Yes.
Mrs. Prince.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Tim.
Yes.
Mr. Piaski.
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein.
Yes.
Mr. Weddy.
Yes.
Mrs. Coletta.
yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Resolution number 13-3-13, resolution adopting the Washera County Emergency Response Plan pursuant to section 323.14(1)(a) Wisconsin statutes.
Okay, would you like Tim to explain it?
Currently, Washington County operates under a emergency operations plan, or an EOP. The state of Wisconsin and the federal government both mandate that the counties, municipalities, townships, villages, and cities all have some form of either an EOP or emergency response plan. The resolution here tonight is replacing the current EOP with a emergency response plan that is in line with the state plan and with FEMA guidelines. That's the way that it was written. I emailed copies of it to everybody that had a email address, and I think if you all got it, you all saw why. It's quite an extensive document, and this is just the basic plan. There's a lot more work that I need to do, you know, things that need to be added, but this is the minimum requirements from the state and the federal government. This plan basically pulls everybody together. If you look at the emergency support functions listed in the plan, there is a coordinating agency for each one of those emergency support functions. Those emergency support functions are fashioned after the current department's responsibilities in the county: mass care and housing, to human services. Public health takes care of the mass prophylaxis, and then under ESF 8 falls the coroner's requirements and so on. So it just streamlines the process. If we were ever to have a disaster and we had to open up the EOC, we know who we're going to call in. We know the incident command structure that we're going to implement. It puts all of you on the same page, as well as the county board chair and the county's administrator.
Make a motion to go ahead and approve it.
Second.
Second by Crawford. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, for anybody's information, it takes 2 cartridges of ink and 2 bundles of paper to print it all off.
Way to go. Yeah, I mean.
I think you need a better printer.
It's pretty thick, Dennis.
You have a question?
I just want to make a suggestion. When you do something like this, it might be a good idea to put a note in our packet that's where you can find the information.
Oh,
I may have received it, I don't recall. But if I'd known it, I might have looked at it if I knew it was coming up.
that's a good point, and,
I need a copy of it too, actually, Tim.
Yeah.
I don't have one.
okay, very good. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? I happen to know that the state thinks Tim is doing a very good job from time to time, so. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign.
Ordinance number 554, ordinance amending Washera County Codes numbers 8, 22, 54, and 58.
Motion by Joe,
I'll second the motion.
second by Dennis Weddy. Any questions or comments? That was all in our packet. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign.
Ordinance number 555, an ordinance amending Chapter 6 Washera County Code.
Motion to approve the ordinance.
Motion by Dennis, second by Bob Jones. Do you have any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign.
Ordinance number 556, an ordinance establishing a procedure for the disposal of unclaimed bodies.
Okay, Ruth, you're on.
Well, basically, over the last year, we've had 3 or 4 different instances where Kate has received a phone call, or I've received a phone call, and we talk to each other, where the coroner has an issue where, or a hospital has an issue where there is a deceased person who is a resident of Washera County and has no family to reclaim them, and thus nobody to make the arrangements for their proper disposal. There are certain things that can be done if they are under certain public assistance programs, then the state has some funding and Kate can help find that so that we have money to pay for it. If the person is a veteran, Bill has some money, and if you recall, he came one time telling you that he was going to need to continue to put money in a line item on his budget in order to take care of these situations when there wasn't state and federal money. And then there are other instances where by statute it just becomes the responsibility of the county to ensure that there is proper disposal. Out of the cases that we've had so far, well, the recent last 4, we have one where the county will be getting the bill from the funeral home for the cremation because we haven't been able to find anybody else to take responsibility for that. I'm really close into getting some family members to reimburse the county, and we will do everything that we can. I will do everything that I can in order to get that money reimbursed. But in the meantime, the coroner and Kate and Bill and I kind of need a procedure about how we should go about this. And we need you to know that there may come a time when I come to you and say, I need some money because I'm going to be over budget because I needed to pay for these people. So this is just an ordinance. I got a copy from Winnebago County is looking at doing one. There are some other counties that were looking at doing it, so I took all of theirs and put something together, and I got input from Bill and Kate on it. This is the product for me.
Make a motion to go ahead with that.
Motion by Kirschner, second by Everett Eckstein. Any other questions or comments? Kate, did that sum it up for you as well? All right, thank you. Okay, no questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Ordinance number 557, an ordinance establishing district attorney fees.
As promised, last month, when we came to ask for additional money to make a half-time ADA a full-time position, here's an ordinance to charge some fees to the public that are involved in writing bad checks and other people who are given a break to avoid a conviction to join a post-plea diversion program, that they would have to pay some fees in order to do that to help fund that position. So this is the ordinance authorizing the district attorney to be in charge of those fees April 1st.
Second?
Motion by Bernadette, second by Bob. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we have some appointments. The Transportation Coordinating Committee, Kristen Jones, Wild Rose. Her term would be March 2013 through April 2014. Then we have Veteran Services Commission, Patrick Fox, Watoma. His term would be through December 31st, 2013, replacing someone that left, isn't he, Bill? All right. And Fred Kaiser, Watoma, his term would go through December 31st, 2013, and he's also replacing someone. Right, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Everett, second by Bernadette. Okay, any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
We have a proclamation designating April 15th through 19th, 2013 as Tornado and Severe Weather Awareness Week. Motion by Bernadette to approve. Second by Bob Jones. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we have designating April 2013 as Alcohol Awareness Month. Motion by Everett, second by Bernadette. Okay, any questions or comments?
I mean, we should go out and buy alcohol?
Huh?
Does that mean we should go out and buy alcohol?
Yeah, right.
Define awareness.
I don't think so. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any board suggestions for future agenda items?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Everett to adjourn,
Probably second.
second by Bob Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Long meeting. Long meeting. Got big money for it.
You were pointing at me. You're gonna stop pursuing me.
Yes, I am.
You can take all the credit.
What you gonna do about it?
In the campground, planning thing, I'm gonna bring that with you tomorrow. That guy called me, he's on it.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay,
That's when we had.
and I'll give you yours
He
to
needs yours.
sign.
There's plenty of signing for everybody.
Sign. Now it's yours.
I just got it, huh?
Now it's yours.
Okay.
Gary Will, is this?
Holy cow. Didn't take him long to get out of here. All done.
Didn't the last time we did though.
I'll play some trailers.
I'll call you tomorrow
Debbie,
on your cell phone.
you say you wanted these?
Yes,
Not
please.
on a mobile home, do it.
Okay. No, I just, I didn't.
Something is all mobile homes.
Wait, Lynn sure shot down that hot dog, football player, didn't he?
I just
Until we're talking about Dancing with the Stars. I said, Lynn.
See, I questioned that right away, that they
Didn't
shouldn't
he?
have been.
Hockey,
Because